Good evening. Certainly glad to be here with you this evening, be able to present the lesson here tonight. I'd ask you to turn your Bibles to Matthew chapter 16 is where we'll start. Matthew chapter 16 and verse 13. And it says, "When Jesus came into the coast of Caesarea Philippi, he asked the disciples, saying, 'Whom do men say that I, the Son of Man, am?' And they said, 'Some say that thou art John the Baptist. Some say Elias, others say Jeremiah, or one of the prophets.' He saith unto them, 'But whom say ye that I am?' And Simon Peter answered and said, 'Thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God.'" Now, I know there have been a lot of lessons given about this series of verses, but there's one thing I want you to think about tonight, and that is courage. And courage is something that's important to each one of us. We all have courage. And when we think about these verses, what do we think about Peter? It took a lot of courage. It took courage for him to recognize that Jesus was standing before him and asking him this question, and courage for him to say the truth, and that Jesus was the Christ, the Son of the living God. Now, if you think about that instant, if you're standing there, would you have the courage to come up and give him that answer? To be able to stand there and say that this is the truth? There's many people that would not have that courage. But there's many things in our lives that take courage. There's a lot of little things. And for a lot of people, just going around talking to people is something that takes courage. But there's times you need courage to go talk to your teacher about something that's going on at school. There's times you need to go talk to your boss about something that's going on. For me, I've got to call a lot of citizens, and you never know how they're going to react when you call them. Are they going to be friendly, or are they going to be a little bit hostile? So it takes courage. Another thing for me it's hard to do, it's hard to go to the doctor. It takes courage. There's a lot of times I'll cancel an appointment and reschedule it 2 days beforehand because I don't have the courage to actually go and hear that things that they're going to tell me that maybe I could stand to lose a couple pounds. But it takes courage to go do that. It also takes courage to go to church. It takes courage to teach Bible class. It takes courage to come forward and say a prayer. It takes courage to give a lesson. Courage is something that we all have in our lives and something that we can all use in things we do day to day. But it's also something that we can also hide within ourselves and choose not to find. It's also something we can just make a decision and choose not to use. Now, we all encounter sin in our lives. Sin comes and finds us. But it takes courage for us to turn and walk away from those times that sin approaches us. There's times that sin may not want you to come to church, and you have to tell them no and say, yes, I'm going to go to church tonight. There might be times where it wants you to commit a sin and just to separate you from God, and so you no longer could be a good, strong Christian. But there's two other words I want you to consider that are very similar to courage. One is encourage, and of course the other is discourage. When you encourage someone, it means that you're giving support or help or hope to somebody so that they can do things. But then it's the opposite, to discourage someone, to help someone lose confidence in the things that they can do and the abilities that they have. As we support each other, we can give confidence to one another. We can also be a discouragement, and so they would not want to do the things that are right. Now, if you turn in your Bibles, you're at Matthew 16. If you just turn back to Matthew chapter 14. We look at Matthew chapter 14 and starting in verse 29. Now this is another series of verses that we're all very familiar with. And it says, "And he said, Come, and when Peter was come down out of the ship, he walked on the water to go to Jesus. But when he saw the wind boisterous, he was afraid, beginning to sink, and cried, saying, Lord, save me. And immediately Jesus stretched forth his hand and caught him, and said unto him, O thou little faith, wherefore didst thou doubt?" But this example shows you all three parts. He had the courage to leave the ship, something that took great courage to walk under the water, to walk toward Jesus. The waves discouraged him, and he lost faith. But in the end, Jesus reached out and caught him, and he was there to support him and give him, to encourage him. These are things we need to remember as we go through the rest of the week, to have courage to do things that are right, the courage to live our Christian lives. We need to encourage one another, and we need to avoid the times when we can be discouraging to other people. If you're here tonight, you have not put the Lord on in baptism, I encourage you to come forward. If you're here tonight and you have erred in the way, whatever your need may be, I encourage you to come forward as we stand and sing the song of encouragement.